I'm going to try to hit these points. I was telling the men before service started tonight, Bob was back there, and Jewel was back there. Who else? Mike Graves was back there. Randy was back there, and I think EJ was back there. And we were talking about how long the business portion might go, and how long would I do the teaching time. And I said, well, I don't really think that either one's going to go very long at all. These points are quick hitting, and I think Bob said, I've heard that before. We are in Genesis chapter 42. We're going to finish the last portion of Genesis chapter 42. If I can recap just ever so briefly the first portion of Genesis 42, you'll remember now we are into a few years into that 7 years of famine, the 7 years of really bad things going on in that area, that region of Egypt. And not only were they experiencing troubled times immediately in Egypt, but also the extended areas as well. You remember Jacob had commissioned his sons, all of them except Benjamin anyway, to go to Egypt. They kind of put their funds together to go up there and to buy some grain in order that they might have food to eat. Now you remember when they got there, they went to the curator of the food, if you will, or the distribution center of the food, and that person would be Joseph. You'll remember this. And what was unique about that encounter? They didn't recognize Joseph, but Joseph certainly recognized them. In fact, he accused them of something. Remember that? He accused them of being spies for another nation who might be a predator to Egypt. Remember that? And he set out a series of events to test them to see whether or not they're spies. Now, again, he knows good and well they're not spies because he knows who they are, but they don't know who he is. He is laying the stage for what he's going to do for them, and also he's testing to see whether or not that they had changed, okay? And so one of the things that he did was he said, well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to put you in a temporary prison. So he puts those 10 boys, okay, his 10 brothers minus Benjamin, who's still home with Daddy. He puts his 10 brothers in a jail for how many days? 3 days. And at the end of 3 days, you'll remember this. He said, I'll tell you what you're going to do. I'm going to, just so that I can prove that you're not spies, I'm going to give you some grain, and I'm going to send you back on your way, and you're going to have to bring your youngest brother with you the next time you come up, and I'm going to hold back one of your brothers, okay? Remember that? Who was that brother? Simeon, which was brother number 2, okay, the second oldest, if you will. And so now we pick up in verse 25, and just read through verse 38, and we'll come back, and I will unpack this, and then we're going to, again, I'm going to try to just move tonight. Verse 25 of chapter 42 says this, Then Joseph gave a command to fill their sacks with grain. Now here's the kicker to this. Joseph gave a command to fill their sacks with grain and to restore every man's money to his sack. Now, on the way home, they're only going to discover one of them's going to be looking at his sack, and he's going to reach in to give some grain to his camel. And he's going, oh no, they didn't take my money that I paid for this grain, okay? And then it's not until later they discovered that all of them had their money in their grain sack. So then Joseph gave a command to fill their sacks with grain, to restore every man's money to his sack. Now, who's the one that gave that command? Joseph. Very important to remember that. And to give them provisions for the journey, thus he did for them. So he didn't give them just enough to survive when they got home, but he gave them extra in order to be taken care of on their way home. So they loaded their donkeys. I said camels as donkeys. So they loaded their donkeys with grain and departed from there. But as for one of them, opened his sack to give his donkey feed at the encampment, he saw his money, and there it was in the mouth of his sack. Look what happens in verse 28. So he said to his brothers, My money has been restored, and there it is in my sack. Then their hearts failed them, and they were afraid. Well, what's there to be afraid of? Now again, Joseph had already put the fear of God in them when he originally met them. Remember that? I mean, he did not reveal who he was because he's getting ready to try and to test them. Okay, I'm sure it probably broke his heart in a lot of ways to be rough with them, but he has to do that because he's playing charades with them right now to set up for what he's going to do. And so they're thinking, man, if he was that harsh to us when we first met him, even though he didn't know who we were, even though that's what they think, and put us in jail for 3 days because he thought that we were spies, man, if word gets out that we somehow stole this grain, that we didn't legally pay for it, my, how bad is it going to be for us? And so they're thinking, then their hearts failed them and they were afraid, saying one to another, and again, look at this. What is this that God has done to us? Again, don't you know that they're eaten up with guilt? They're eaten up with guilt in what they'd done with Joseph so many years ago. Verse 29, and then they went to Jacob, their father, in the land of Canaan, and told him all that had happened to them, saying, now here's where we're going to get into this particular story deep. There are basically three main characters in this story. There's Jacob. We're going to see him in just a moment. And then we get into the first part of chapter 43. We'll see Judah and what he says. And the last part, we'll see Joseph and what he does. Well, look first of all, beginning in verse 29. When they go to Jacob, it says, and then they went to Jacob, their father, in the land of Canaan, and told him all that happened to them. And the man who is Lord of the land spoke roughly to us. So they're recounting to their father Jacob what had happened to them, and they're telling him, look, the guy that we met with, he was not a very nice guy. As a matter of fact, he was really rude to us. He was rough with us. As a matter of fact, he called us or assumed that we were spies of the country. But we said to him, we're honest men, we are not spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of our father. One is no more, and the youngest is with our father to this day in the land of Canaan. And so they're being reminded that they assumed that Joseph was dead. Is there any wonder why they didn't recognize him? Stay with me now. Verse 33. Then the man, the Lord of the country, that's again talking about Joseph, said to us, by this I will know that you are honest men and not spies, essentially. Leave one of your brothers here with me and take food for the famine for your family and be gone. But here's the thing, verse 34, and bring your youngest brother to me, so I shall know that you are not spies, but that you are honest men, and I will grant your brother to you. That is, when you come back to get grain again, and you bring your youngest brother, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to release Simeon, your other brother, to you. Okay, that way I'll know that you are not spies. And again, you already know this. Joseph already knew they weren't spies. He is trying them. He is testing them. He says, I will grant your brother to you, and you may trade in the land. That is, you may freely buy in the land. Now watch this, verse 35. Then it happened as they emptied their sacks that surprisingly each man's bundle of money was in his sack. And when now watch this, and who? Their father saw the bundles of money. What happened to them? They were afraid. Look at verse 36. Now here's where Jacob says, Jacob, their father, said to them, you have bereaved me. You've already made me sad. Joseph is no more. Simeon is no more. Now let's just stop right here just for a moment and think with me this very first point about Jacob's plight, not Joseph, Jacob's plight. Now think about where he's been in his life as it relates to his sons. Remember the last time that the boys went out and came home and they were minus one brother? They were minus one son? Remember that? Remember what the story was that they told Jacob? Remember they brought that coat of many colors, they brought it to Jacob and they killed an animal and put some blood on it. Remember that? What did they tell their dad? Hey, we found Bubba's coat and there's blood on it. So we presume that something really, really bad happened to him. Matter of fact, that's what Jacob assumed. Remember that? And so he thought his son was dead. So now he sends them out again, and they come back this time, missing a brother. Now, I'll be honest with you. This is just the way I think. I'm thinking that as the years have gone by, do you think it ever crossed the mind of Jacob that, you know what? At first, I thought Joseph was killed by an animal. But I'm wondering, those boys, they were always jealous of Joseph. They were always mean to him. I wonder in the back of his mind that he thought that just maybe, that they had done something to Joseph. And I think the reason why I'm coming to that conclusion is because now they come to him and they're missing another brother. And what are they wanting to do? They're wanting to take not just another brother, but the new favorite, right? And again, remember this, Benjamin, at least Jacob's, this in his mind, Benjamin is the last tie, if you will, to his wife Rachel. Benjamin means absolutely the world to him, okay? Any of you got any, I don't want to call it treasures, but you got things in your life. I know, Seth, you got many treasures. Do you have things in your life that maybe was handed down by a grandmother or a great-grandmother that just means the world to you and that it would be terribly sad to you if you ever lost it or it got destroyed? I think all of us do, okay? I've got some stuff that maybe not necessarily all that old, but it belonged to someone who was near and dear to my heart one time. And this is kind of the situation that Jacob is in with Benjamin. And he's probably thinking in his mind that, you know what, maybe they killed off Joseph, and maybe in some type of deal, they may have dusted off Simeon too, and now they're wanting another brother, my last pet, if you will. In fact, what's his reaction? What's his reaction to this when they said, hey, this is the situation that happened to us, and we've got to take, in order to rescue Simeon, we've got to take Benjamin back with us. But look at verse 36. And Jacob, their father, said to him, you have bereaved me. You have made me incredibly sad. Joseph is no more. Simeon is no more. And now you want to take Benjamin? He says, all these things are against me. Now watch this. Then Reuben says, now who is Reuben? He's the oldest. Reuben's thinking, Dad, you don't know the situation here. We can't go back without Benjamin. So here's the deal that I'm willing to make with you. Then Reuben said, he spoke to his father saying, kill my two sons if I do not bring him back to you, meaning bringing Benjamin back to you. Put him in my hands and I will bring him back to you. But what's Jacob's answer to that? Verse 38. Even with that caveat, what does he say? What does it say, church? Right there, verse 38. But he said, my son shall not go with you. And here's his answer. No, and that's my final answer. No, it's not going to happen. For his brother is dead, he is left alone, and if any calamity should befall him along the way in which you go, then you would bring down my gray hair with sorrow to the grave. In other words, you might as well just kill me off too. So we see, first of all, Jacob's plight. Now we move into chapter 43, and we see Judah's pledge. Jacob's plight, and now Judah's pledge. Look at verse 1. Now a famine was severe in the land. Okay, so now they're thinking about what are they going to do. Now a famine was severe in the land, and it came to pass when they had eaten up the grain which they had bought from Egypt, or I think the better way to say is that Joseph gave to them because they didn't really buy it. It came to pass when they had eaten up the grain which they had bought from Egypt, that their father said to him, go back and buy us a little food. Judah, verse 3, but Judah spoke to him, warning, saying, the man solemnly warned us, saying, you shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. If you send your brother with us, or rather if you send our brother with us, we will go down and buy you food. But if you will not send him, we will not what? Go. For the man said to us, you shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. And he's explaining to his dad, Dad, look, I know you didn't believe us the first time we told you this, but we are being as serious as we know how to be. This is the situation. We cannot go back before him. I mean, the last time we went, he locked us up in jail for 3 days. What do you think will happen this time we go to him and we don't give what he's demanded of us? But look at this. But if you do not send him, we will not go down. For the man said to us, you shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. Look at verse 6. In Israel, we're talking about Jacob. Jacob and Israel, one and the same. And Israel said, why did you deal so wrongfully with me as to tell the man whether you still had another brother? In other words, guys, aren't you not thinking? Why did you even tell him that? Verse 7, but they said, the man asked us pointedly, hey, Dad, we didn't offer up this information. He asked us a direct question, which demanded a direct answer. The man asked us pointedly about ourselves and our family, saying, is your father still alive? Have you another brother? And we told him, according to these words, could we possibly have known that he would say, bring your brother down? I think you get the gist here. How would we know that he was going to ask for our younger brother? Now watch what happens in verse 8. Then Judah said to Israel, his father, send the lad with me, and we will arise and go, that we may live and not die. I mean, think about their situation. If they go without, at least in their mind, if they go without Benjamin, it's a death sentence. If they don't go and buy food, it's a death sentence. Okay? Then Judah said to Israel, his father, send the lad with me. We will arise and go, and we may live and not die, both we and you, and also our little ones. Now watch this. Here's the deal. Here's the pledge that he makes. He says, I myself will be surety for him. From my hand you shall require him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, then let me bear the blame forever. For if he had not lingered, surely by now we would have returned the second time. Their father Israel said to them, if it must be so, then do this. Take some of the best fruits of the land in your vessels, and carry down a present for the man, a little balm, a little honey, spices, myrrh, pistachio nuts, and almonds. So get the picture here. What's happening here is Judah. Now think about Judah and all that he's gone through. You remember it was Judah that defied his dad, or not defied, what's the word I'm looking for? He had relations with Jacob's handmaid that belonged to Rachel. Remember that? Bilhah, remember that? And then he got married, and his wife ended up dying. They ended up having twins. And Judah is saying now, you know what, Dad, here's the deal. If we don't go, we're going to die because we're going to starve to death. If we go without Benjamin, we're going to die because this man meant business when he told us what he told us. But here's the thing. Dad, I'm telling you, I'm giving you my oath. I'm putting my own life as the ransom, if you will, for Benjamin. If we go, then the curator of the food will be happy, be pleased, and know that we're not spies. And I promise you that we will bring him back. If we do not bring Benjamin back, then Dad, it's my life for his, essentially. And so Jacob finally gives in, and here's what he says. All right, we're going to do this. We're going to do it right. We're going to carry a gift to this man that you met. In fact, he says, you're going to gather all of this gift basket, if you will. Verse 12, take double money in your hand and take back in your hand the money that was returned in the mouth of your sacks. And perhaps it was an oversight, that he won't think that you're trying to get away with something. Take your brother also and arise and go back to the man. So now Jacob has conceded to allow Benjamin to go with them. In verse 14 and 15, watch this. And may God Almighty give you mercy before the man, that he may release your other brother and Benjamin. If I am bereaved, I am bereaved. So the men took that present and Benjamin, and they took double money in their hand and arose and went down to Egypt, and they stood before Joseph. So we see so far Jacob's plight. Hey, this is the offer that's been made to me, and I can't do it. I can't do it. I cannot risk losing my only tie to Rachel, essentially. And then Judah steps up and says, no. We're in dire straits here. If we don't go, we're going to die. If we go up there without Benjamin, we are going to die. And Dad, here's the pledge that I'm making to you, that it's my life for his if we don't bring him back. And then we come to, I think, the crux of this entire text. In verses 16 through 34, and we see not only Jacob's plight and Judah's pledge, but we see Joseph's plan. Joseph's plan. And I want you to see it's an 8-step plan. Look at verse 16 and 17, and I want you to see, first of all, the feast. The feast, verse 16 and 17. And when Joseph saw Benjamin, so they've made it back to Egypt. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said, now watch this. He said to the steward, this is his servant, if you will. This is Joseph's servant. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the steward of the house, take these men to my home and slaughter an animal and make ready, for these men will dine with who? With me at noon. And look at verse 17. Then the man, that is the steward, the servant of Joseph, did as Joseph ordered, and the man brought the men into Joseph's house. And so the very first thing that I want you to notice here, we think about Joseph's plan. And again, he's getting ready to reveal himself to his brothers. He prepares a feast. And by the way, this was initiated by Joseph. This was part of Joseph's plan. He bore the cost of putting this feast together. Yes, he gave the steward the order to do it and to carry it out, but this was initiated by Joseph, and he would bear the cost of putting on this feast for his brothers, okay? But not only see the feast, but look at verse 18, we see the fear. The fear, verse 18, because the Bible says that they are brought into Joseph's house. Now keep in mind, these are rugged farmers, if you will. They're shepherds. They're not used to this kind of lifestyle, and so they come into a palace-like house, and the Bible says that they were, verse 18, they were afraid. Why were they afraid?
They were farmers, and normal people didn't go into the house of the big guy.
You know, I see it all the time from this side of the pews. When you're looking out, I can see and look at individuals who are not used to being in church. And I'll be honest with you, and Greg, am I not right about this? There is a little bit of fear and trepidation about them because, look, I'm out of my element. I'm in God's house. You know what I'm saying? And what's unique about it, we're talking about the rappers, the candy rappers a while ago, is some of those who are not used to being in church, they're more respectful for God's house than the people who sit in the pew every week. Get off my own feet. That is sad.
I went to a class, and it said that the people that, your guests, come into your sanctuary, your God's house, they're fearful, anxious, and skeptical.
Heavy emphasis on skeptical. Yeah.
Absolutely. And they believe, they've done a survey and however they do it, that they think, especially the millennials who come in,
Younger ones.
yeah, the younger ones, we are a cult,
Yeah.
and we are to be feared.
Yeah. Especially those who did not grow up in church.
Right.
Absolutely.
We got to overcome that.
Yeah. And some of that only God can do.
That's right.
Okay.
Prayer.
There is stuff that we can do, but some of that only God can do. Now, the point I want to make here is that they were afraid because they are out of their element.
Right.
Okay? And then notice the third thing, verse 19. Let me finish verse 18. And the men were afraid because they were brought into Joseph's house, and they said, and again, keep in mind, he had already put the intimidation factor on them, right? And so now they're not just in the courtyard, so to speak. Now they are in the house, right? It is because of the money. That he's thinking that he's brought them there to knock them off in his house, right? They're about to get the axe, if you will. It's because of the money which was returned in our sacks the first time that we are brought here so that he might make a case against us, seize us, and take us as slaves. We're going to be his servants. So they were afraid. And then we see not only the feast and the fear, but then we see the find, F-I-N-D, the find. Look at verse 19, because look at what they do. And when they drew near to who? The steward, that is the servant of Joseph's house, they talked to him at the door of the house, and they're interested. They want to inquire of him some things. They said, "Oh, sir, can we have a moment with you? We indeed came down the first time to buy food, but it happened, we don't know how, but it happened when we came to the encampment that we opened our sacks, and there each man's money was in the mouth of his sack, and our money in full weight, so we have brought it back in our hand." There's been an innocent mistake. We thought that we had paid for that, but when we looked in our sacks, we found the money, and trust me, it was an honest oversight on our part. So he's trying to get with the steward here. They are trying to get with the steward here, trying to smooth this over with him, but then watch what happens. But it happened, verse 23, and we have brought down our money in our hands to buy food. We do not know who put our money in our sacks, but watch this. But he said, who said? The steward. This is incredible. He says, peace be with you, and do not be what? Afraid. Watch this. Your God and the God of your father has given you treasure in your sacks, and I had your money. Then he brought Simeon out to them. Don't you know that he was a sight for sore eyes? Hey, he's still alive. That's good. That's good. But isn't that amazing? He points out to them, hey, your fear is not really justified. In fact, you want to know where that money came from? Your God did that through the hand of Joseph. Joseph is the one that gave the order to do that. So we see the feast, the fear, the find. Then verse 25 through 28, we see the formality. The formality, because look what happens next in verse 25. Not only is Simeon brought out, but now Joseph makes his grand entrance. Verse 25, and they made the present ready for Joseph coming at noon. For they heard that they would eat bread there. Now watch this. And when Joseph came home, they brought him the present which was in their hand in the house. And look what they did. What did they do? They bowed. They're honoring him. Let's go back to chapter 37, when he talked about not the cheese, but the sheaves. I did that just for Janice. Now it's all coming full circle, isn't it? By the way, this won't be the last time they bow. Watch this. Verse 27. And he asked them about their well-being. Isn't that interesting? They thought he's there to make them his slaves, and now he's inquiring, hey, how are you doing? And he asked them about their well-being and said, is your father well? The old man of whom you spoke, is he still alive? And I wonder if they said, he's okay. Verse 28, and they answered, your servant, our father, is in good health, and he is still alive. And there's that word again. And they bowed their heads down, prostrated themselves. Now watch this. Then he lifted his eyes, that is, Joseph lifted his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son. Now think about what makes Benjamin so special to Joseph. This is his one full-blooded brother. The other ones are half-brothers, right? And look what happens. He asked the question, is this your younger brother of whom you spoke to me? Now again, do you think he already knew? No doubt about it. And he said, God be gracious to you, my son. He's speaking of Benjamin. And watch this, verse 30. We see not only the feast, the fear, the find, the formality of Joseph making this grand entrance, but beginning in verse 29 and verse 30 and 31, we see the feeling because Joseph's going to do something again that we saw him do earlier. What did he do? Verse 29, then he lifted his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, is this your younger brother of whom you spoke to me? He said, God be gracious to you, my son. And watch this, and his heart yearned for his brother. Again, why so? Because that is his full-blooded brother. And look what Joseph had to do. Joseph made haste and sought somewhere to do what? He wept, and he went into his chamber, and what did he do? He wept there. You know what I think about when I think about Joseph and this weeping? I think about Jesus. The Bible talks about that Jesus, 3 different occasions that Jesus wept, 3 different times. We're most familiar with when Lazarus died. Remember that? Many of you got that one verse memorized, John 11:35. Jesus wept. But also Jesus, remember when he went up on a hill and he looked over the city of Jerusalem. Remember that? Remember what he said? The Bible says that he wept. And he said, oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, would I not have taken you just like a mother hen under her wings? But you would not. You resisted. And I think this emotion that's going through Joseph in this moment is not only for his brothers, but think about all of these years that have wasted. You can't restore those, right? Probably a couple of years. Yeah. Yeah. Watch this. We see the feeling, he gets very emotional. Then we see the familiarity, verse 32 and 33. So they set him, now watch, this is very funny to me. Then he washed his face and came out. He doesn't want them to see him having cried. Again, not because they might start saying, oh, you big sissy, nothing like that. I think if they see him being emotion, that may give away who he is, right? So he washed his face, he restrained himself, and he said, serve the bread. Verse 32. So they set him a place by himself. Now here's where it gets very, very interesting. So they set him a place by himself. Now watch this. And them by themselves. That is the brothers. Watch this. And the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves, because the Egyptians could not eat the food with the Hebrews, for that it was an abomination to the Hebrews. Now look at verse 33. Look at how they did this. And they sat before him, that is, they sat before Joseph, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his young. Here's the picture. From left to right, you've got Reuben, you've got Simeon, you've got Levi, you've got Judah, you've got Dan, you've got Naphtali, you've got Gad, you've got Asher, you've got Issachar, you've got Zebulun, and you've got Benjamin. I wrote it down. I guarantee I don't have that kind of memory. So he's got them all in the order of their birth. Now keep in mind, they didn't choose to sit that way. Joseph had them sit that way. How did they react to that? We're told. What does it say? How did they react to that? They looked at that, or the men looked at astonishment with one another. They're looking at each other thinking, how could he know? How could he know? And there's only one reason why. He was the little brother, right? And in verse 34, we see the favor. Look at what he does. I think this is kind of funny too. Verse 34. Now keep in mind, he's serving them this meal. And so the plates are set in front of each of the brothers. And there's a skirmish coming from the kitchen. Finally, the doors open wide. Look at this. We're told that he took the servants to them, or rather, then he took servants to them from before him. But Benjamin's serving was 5 times as much as any of theirs. Can't you just see it? A lowly servant put down their place for them. But it takes 2 carrying this big tray of food, and they set it before Benjamin. Why do you think that happened?
He's kind of wanting them to get the idea. Hey, he might be a little more than normal.
Yeah. Somebody else? It's okay. That's okay. No, go ahead. No, go. No, go with it.
Okay. It says he was testing his brothers to see if they would still be jealous.
Boom.
Well, that didn't come from Mr. Ryrie.
Charles Ryrie. I've got his commentary, so we're good. But that's exactly right. At least that's my opinion and Dr. Ryrie's opinion. I think that's exactly right. Because, now keep in mind, I'm getting to that. Charles Ryrie, I have a Ryrie study Bible too, great Bible study Bible. He says in there, and this is where I'm coming from as well, that he brought this extra food to Benjamin. What he's doing with his brothers, the reason why he didn't reveal himself, he's testing to see whether or not they were still the rugged, rude, mean-spirited brothers that they are. Now keep in mind, why did they do to Joseph what they did to begin with? Because they were insanely jealous. And now don't you know that Benjamin was now the new pet son? And so now he's going to bestow all of this food on Benjamin to see what kind of reaction he would get from the other brothers. Would they rise up and think, well, that's not fair? He's testing their jealousy there as well. And so that's exactly where I was going with that. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else got an opinion on that? They said, well, not now that Dr. Ryrie has spoken. No, well, that could be too. That could be too. But I really believe, without a doubt, that this was a test of his brothers to see whether or not, you know what, they've already shown some humility here. That, again, they've bowed down before him, right? But is there still a spirit of jealousy there? And by the way, can I just say this? I'm going to move on. There's no room in the Christian heart for jealousy. You know why? Because we're not competing with each other. We're serving the risen Savior. It's His kingdom that we are seeking to advance. Man, if God is blessing you in advancing the kingdom, man, I rejoice with you because when you win, I win. We are not competing against each other. Then last but not least, I love this. There doesn't seem to be any jealousy at all because it goes on to say in the latter part of verse 34, so they drank and were merry with him, and that is, I'm going to call that the fellowship. No jealousy whatsoever. They are fellowshipping one with another. And the next week, we'll see that Joseph reveals himself to his brothers. Any questions or comments about our study tonight? Yeah. Hang on. What blanks are you missing?
Bill gave it to me.
Thank you, Bill. I'm sorry, who had a question?
When all this negotiation was going on with Jacob, did they know already that the lineage would go through Judah? Has that been revealed yet?
That's a good question. I would say no, because it's not been pointed out to us yet.
Because my thought was, if they knew Judah, then that would have been another one of those cases where they were doubting the covenant, but they didn't know that exactly.
Right. So you answered your own question. Yeah, good job.
Another thing we noticed that Judah is the one that started taking charge of the negotiating. Remember?
Have you heard what Jules said, that Judah is the one who stepped up to take over the negotiations with his dad? Remember that, with his dad as well with Joseph as well. Now think about this. What did Judah offer as ransom for his dad, for Benjamin? Himself.
See, that's what made me think about it. Did they know that yet?
Yeah.
Because if they'd have known that, then they should have known he would have been saved.
Yeah, and what has Jesus done for us? He has not just offered, he has been the sacrifice for us. Yeah, y'all are thinking, I love this. This is good. Anything else? He's an old man. Don't travel very well. Yeah. Yeah. Again, we're more modern parents. Jacob wasn't the best of dads. I think we know that, right? He was not the best of dads.
Hey, but he moves when he finds out.
Sure he does. Yeah. Have y'all enjoyed our study in Genesis? Man, I have thoroughly enjoyed it. And so y'all be thinking about something. You don't have to give me anything today. We're going to finish this probably in the next 3 or 4 weeks. Okay? Definitely by this time next month, I think we'll be done with the book of Genesis. Be thinking of either a topic or a book that you would like to study on Wednesday nights, and I will take it under advisement. I can't say it, I'll commit to it, but I will take it under advisement. Okay? Huh? Lamentations. I thought somebody would yell out Song of Solomon. Yeah. Or Numbers. What is it? What's the one that's hardest to read? Leviticus? That's a hard one to read. Yeah. Anybody else? Jeremiah? Yeah, we are reading. And you know what? Sam brought this up the other night, or yesterday, when I was talking about Sunday night about the potter and the clay in Romans chapter 9. God talked about, I was the potter and you were the clay. And I was trying to think of what prophet in the Old Testament spoke about that. God said, hey, go down to the potter's house. And I couldn't remember if it was Ezekiel or Jeremiah. And sometimes my prophets get mixed up sometimes. You ever get like that? And had I been on my current reading schedule like you were talking about, I would have read that day. Sunday's reading would have been Jeremiah in the potter's house. And so, by the way, I am current now, okay?
Yeah, we're current. We're
Yeah, I had gotten a couple of days behind too, Sam, so don't feel like the lone